Admiral Thala stood on the bridge of her massive warship, watching Earth burn in the distance. Smoke rose from the human cities below as her fleet's weapons finished their work. The blue and green planet looked smaller now, broken and defeated. The Kethvar Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their crystal ships were the strongest in space. Their weapons could destroy entire worlds. No enemy had ever beaten them in battle. Today was just another easy victory. All human military bases are destroyed, reported Commander Velkan from his station. His 6 arms moved quickly over the control panels. Their space stations are gone. Their ships are floating junk. Thala nodded. Her tall, thin body swayed as she moved closer to the main screen. The Kethvar looked like walking crystals. Light passed through their clear skin, creating rainbow patterns. They were beautiful and deadly at the same time. How long did their resistance last? She asked. 6 hours, Admiral. They surrendered after we destroyed their moonbase. The Admiral laughed, a sound like breaking glass. 6 hours was longer than most species lasted. The humans had surprised her by fighting at all. Most primitive races just gave up when they saw the Empire's ships. Begin setting up the occupation platforms, she ordered. The Empire wants this system working again in 10 days. The Kethvar Empire did not just destroy worlds, they conquered them. They took the useful species and made them slaves. They mined the planets for resources. They built factories and shipyards. Each new system made the Empire stronger. Earth's humans would make decent workers. They were small but clever. Their bodies could handle many different environments. The Empire had good plans for them. But as the fleet moved into position around Earth, something strange happened. Lieutenant Quixmar, the youngest officer on the bridge, noticed it first. She was watching the sensor screens when she saw a blip appear at the edge of the system. Admiral, she said carefully. There's something on the outer sensors. Thala turned. Another human ship hiding behind an asteroid? I don't think so. The reading is different. The Admiral walked to Quixmar's station. The young officer's crystal body was flickering with nervous colors. On the screen, a small dot appeared for just a moment, then vanished. Show me the data, Thala ordered. The sensor reading was impossible. The object had appeared near the gas giant at the system's edge. It was the right size to be a ship, but it moved wrong. It had been there, then not there, then somewhere else entirely. No ship could move that fast. Run a full scan of that area, the Admiral commanded. The powerful sensors of the Empire ship reached out across space. They could detect a single metal bolt from 1,000,000 miles away. But when they focused on where the object had been, they found nothing. Maybe it was a sensor error, suggested Commander Velkan, but Quixmar shook her head. Admiral, I'm getting energy readings from that area. Very faint, but they're there. Something is watching us. Thala felt a chill run through her crystal body. In 3,000 years, the Empire had never faced an enemy they couldn't see. Their sensors could detect anything that existed in normal space. Keep scanning, she ordered. I want to know what's out there. For the next few hours, the mysterious readings continued. The object would appear on sensors for a few seconds, then disappear completely. It seemed to be studying them, moving from position to position around the fleet. Sometimes, it was near the asteroid belt. Sometimes it was behind one of the moons. Once, it appeared much closer to the fleet before vanishing again. The strangest part was how it moved. Ships had to follow the laws of physics. They needed time to speed up and slow down. They had to travel through space from one point to another, but this object seemed to just appear and disappear instantly. Could it be some kind of new human technology? Asked Velkan. Thala considered this. The humans barely have working space travel. Their fastest ships are slower than our cargo vessels. How could they build something we cannot detect? OC. But the readings kept coming. Whatever was out there, it was real. And it was watching them. On the 3rd day, something worse happened. One of the Empire's patrol ships stopped responding to communications. The vessel had been checking the outer asteroid belt when it went silent. When other ships arrived at its position, They found empty space. Where is the ship? Zixthala demanded. The search teams found debris scattered across several miles. The patrol ship had been completely destroyed, but there was no sign of what had attacked it. No weapon marks on the metal pieces, no energy readings from enemy weapons. It's like the ship just came apart, reported the search team leader. Zixthala stared at the empty space on her screen. One of her ships was gone, destroyed by an enemy she couldn't see or fight. In 3,000 years of conquest, this had never happened to the Kethvar Empire. Double the patrols, she ordered. I want every ship scanning for this phantom. But even with more ships searching, the mysterious contact kept appearing and disappearing. It seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Some of her officers started calling it the ghost ship. Late that night, Admiral Zixthala stood alone on her bridge, watching the stars. Earth hung in the distance like a broken jewel. Her fleet controlled the system completely, but somewhere out there, something was hunting her ships. She had sent word to Empire High Command about the strange contacts. They would probably just tell her to ignore sensor ghosts and focus on the conquest. But Zixthala had been a warrior for 200 years. She knew the difference between broken equipment and a real threat. Whatever was out there, it was planning something. She could feel it watching her, studying her fleet, waiting for the right moment to strike again. The humans had seemed completely defeated, but maybe one of their ships had escaped. Maybe they were still fighting back. The Admiral made a decision. She would find this ghost ship and destroy it. The Kethvar Empire did not run from shadows and mysteries. They were the masters of the galaxy, and nothing would change that. But as she watched the stars, Zixthala couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in this system. Something that might change everything. Dr. Sarah Chen floated in the pilot seat of the Times Revenant Asterisk, watching the Empire ships through her view screen. The small human vessel hung in space like a metal ghost, invisible to the enemy sensors. Around her, 6 other crew members worked quietly at their stations. Phase drive is stable, reported Marcus Webb, the ship's engineer. He was a big man with steady hands, perfect for working with dangerous technology. We can stay hidden for another hour before we need to recharge. Sarah nodded. The quantum tunneling system that kept them invisible was still new and untested. 3 months ago, it had been just a theory in her research lab. Now it was the only thing keeping humanity alive. Any word from the other resistance cells? Asked Captain Kim Torres from the weapons station. Radio silence, said Sarah, just like we planned. The Empire can't track what they can't hear. Sarah Chen had been Earth's leading quantum physicist before the invasion. She had spent years studying how matter behaved at the smallest level, where the normal rules of physics broke down. When the Empire ships appeared in Earth's sky, most scientists had given up hope. But Sarah saw an opportunity. The Kethvar technology was advanced but predictable. Their sensors looked for heat, metal, and energy. Their ships moved through normal space using conventional engines. They had never faced an enemy that could exist between the layers of reality itself. The Times Revenant Times was built in secret during the 6-hour war. While the Empire destroyed Earth cities, a small team of engineers had worked frantically to finish Sarah's prototype. The ship was tiny compared to the crystal giants of the Kethvar. It carried only basic weapons and life support for 7 people. But it could do something no other ship in the galaxy could do. It could phase. Target acquired, said Lieutenant Jake Miller from the sensor station. He was barely 20 years old, but his eyes were sharp and his reflexes were faster than anyone Sarah had ever met. Single patrol ship. Moving along the asteroid belt. Nundi. Sarah looked at the tactical display. The Empire ship was alone, far from the main fleet. Perfect for what they needed to do. Remember the plan, she said quietly. We phase in behind them, hit the engines and life support, then phase out before they can react. No heroics. We're not trying to win a fair fight. Understood, said Torres. Her fingers moved over the weapons controls. The Times Revenant Times carried small but precise laser cutters, designed for surgery rather than battle. Sarah's hands moved to the phase controls. This was the dangerous part. When they shifted into quantum space, every atom in their bodies would exist in multiple places at once. The ship's special field kept them together. But if something went wrong, they would scatter across the universe as quantum dust. Beginning phase sequence, Sarah announced. The ship around them began to shimmer. The walls became transparent, then returned to normal, then faded again. Sarah felt her body tingle as the quantum field took effect. For a moment, she could see through her own hands. Then they were between spaces, existing in the gap between real and not real. Through the view screen, normal space looked gray and strange. The Empire ship appeared as a bright outline against the darkness. Phase drive active. We're invisible, reported Webb. Sarah pushed the controls forward. In quantum space, they could move faster than light, without needing massive engines. They slipped through the empty areas between atoms, sliding past obstacles that would block a normal ship. In seconds, they were behind the Empire patrol vessel. Dropping to normal space, Sarah said, the time's revenant times became solid again, appearing right behind the enemy ship's engines. The HFY vessel was beautiful, made of growing crystal that caught and reflected light, but beauty wouldn't save it. Firing, said Torres. The laser cutters lanced out, invisible beams that sliced through the Empire ship's vital systems. The engines went dark. Life support failed. Emergency lights flickered and died. Target disabled, Torres reported. No return fire. Phase us out now, Sarah ordered. They shifted back into quantum space just as the Empire ship's distress signal began broadcasting. By the time other HFY vessels arrived, the time's revenant times was gone, leaving only a crippled ship and confused aliens. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. That was the third Empire ship they had disabled this week. Each attack was teaching them more about their enemies and their own capabilities. How's our power? She asked Webb. Quantum batteries at 40%. We can manage one more attack today, or we can stay hidden for 6 hours. Sarah considered their options. The Empire fleet was starting to patrol in groups, making attacks more dangerous. But they were also getting nervous. She could see it in their movement patterns. The crystal ships were staying closer together, scanning constantly for threats they couldn't find. Set course for the outer system, she decided. Let's see what the main fleet is doing. As they moved through quantum space, Sarah thought about the message she had sent to the surviving resistance cells on other human worlds. The quantum tunneling technology could be copied if they had the right materials and knowledge. She had transmitted the complete blueprints, hidden in what looked like normal radio static. By now, other human survivors might be building their own phase ships. The Empire had spread across the galaxy by being stronger and more advanced than everyone else, but they had never faced an enemy that could step outside the normal rules of reality. Admiral Zeke Thala's flagship is moving, reported Miller. Looks like they're heading for a closer orbit around Earth. Sarah studied the tactical display. The Empire ships were beautiful and powerful, but they moved like they owned the universe. They had never learned to be afraid. I think it's time we taught them fear, she said. The time's revenant times slipped through quantum space toward the heart of the Empire fleet. They were just one small ship against 1,000 giants, but they carried something the Empire had never faced before: human stubbornness and the refusal to accept defeat. Beginning close approach to the flagship, Sarah announced. Let's show them what Earth's ghosts can do. The ship shimmered and became invisible again as it moved toward the massive crystal command ship. Behind them, more Empire vessels were finding disabled patrol ships and empty space where their allies should be. Admiral Zix Thala was about to learn that some enemies couldn't be seen or fought with normal weapons. Some enemies lived in the spaces between atoms, in the gaps between what was real and what was possible, and some enemies never stopped fighting, no matter how hopeless things looked. The time's revenant times hung in quantum space near the Empire flagship, watching and waiting. Sarah Chen had been a peaceful scientist before the invasion. Now she was something else entirely. A ghost with a mission. A phantom with a purpose. The real war was just beginning. Admiral Zix Thala had not slept in 3 days. She stood on her bridge, staring at the tactical display that showed her shrinking fleet. Red markers indicated ships that had gone silent. Yellow markers showed vessels with mysterious damage. Green markers were all that remained of her once mighty force. "Another patrol ship is not responding," reported Commander Velkan. His crystal body flickered with worried colors. "That's the 8th one this week. Send a rescue team," Zixthala ordered automatically, but she knew what they would find. Either empty space where a ship should be, or a crippled vessel floating dead in the void. The phantom enemy was driving her insane. Every day brought new reports of impossible attacks. Ships would lose their engines while their crews slept. Vital systems would shut down for no reason. Weapons would fire at empty space, draining power reserves. Her officers were starting to crack under the pressure. They jumped at shadows on their screens. They reported ghost contacts that vanished when investigated. Some claimed they could feel eyes watching them through the ship's walls. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Queeksmar, her voice shaking. "Clean cuts through the hull, like something used surgical tools." Zixthala closed her eyes. The attacks were getting bolder. At first, the Phantom had only disabled ships. Now it was destroying them completely. But there was never any sign of weapons fire, no energy signatures, no debris from enemy vessels. "Any survivors?" she asked. "No, Admiral. The crew compartments were open to space, but there are no signs of boarding, no blast marks. The cuts were made from outside, but we can't figure out how." The Admiral turned to study the main screen. Earth hung there peacefully, still under Empire control. The human cities were rebuilding under Kethvar supervision. The population was working in the new factories and mines. Everything looked normal. But somewhere out there, something was hunting her fleet. "Admiral," called the communications officer. "High Command is requesting an update on the conquest progress." Zixthala felt her crystal body grow cold. How could she explain this to her superiors? How could she tell them that her fleet was being destroyed by an enemy she couldn't see or fight? "Tell them the system is secure, but cleanup operations are ongoing," she replied. It was almost a lie. The system was under Empire control, but her fleet was dying piece by piece, and she had no idea how to stop it. The Phantom seemed to know everything about Kethvar technology and tactics. It struck at the exact moments when ships were most vulnerable. It targeted the systems that would cause maximum damage with minimum effort. It was like fighting an enemy that could read her mind. "Change our patrol patterns," Zixthala ordered. "No ship travels alone. All vessels maintain formation and keep full sensor sweeps active." But even group patrols weren't safe. 2 days later, 3 ships on formation patrol simply stopped responding. When the rescue force arrived, they found the vessels drifting in space. Their crews were unconscious but alive. All their weapons and engines had been precisely disabled. There were no injuries, no signs of fighting. The crews remembered nothing. One moment they had been on normal patrol. The next, they were waking up in emergency lighting with dead ships around them. "It's like they were put to sleep," reported the medical officer. "No drugs in their systems, no head injuries. They just lost time." Zixthala realized the Phantom wasn't just destroying her ships, it was playing with them. It could have killed those crews easily. But instead it chose to humiliate them, to show that it could take Empire vessels whenever it wanted. The psychological effect was devastating. Her officers were terrified of an enemy they couldn't understand. They had spent their lives believing that Kethvar technology was supreme. Now they faced something that made their advanced sensors and weapons useless. "Admiral," said Commander Velkan quietly, "some of the crew are asking to be transferred to other fleets." "Transfer requests denied," Zixthala snapped. "We're not running from ghosts and shadows." But privately, she understood their fear. She was afraid too. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Empire had never faced anything like this. Their enemies had always been visible, predictable, defeatable. This Phantom was something new. The attacks continued, each one more impossible than the last. The Phantom would appear inside their formation for just a moment, visible on sensors but gone before weapons could target it. It would follow their flagship at a distance, staying just out of weapons range, watching. Some nights, Zixthala could swear she felt it out there. A presence in the darkness. Studying her fleet, like a scientist examining insects. It knew their movements, their weaknesses, their fears. "Admiral," called the sensor operator. "I'm detecting the phantom again. Distance. It's impossible. The contact is showing up inside our defensive perimeter." All eyes turned to the tactical display. A small red dot pulsed in the center of their formation, surrounded by Empire ships. But when they focused the sensors on that position, they found nothing. "Full weapons sweep of that area," Zixthala ordered desperately. Energy beams lanced out from a dozen ships, turning empty space into a deadly light show. For a moment, the scanner showed something shimmer in the weapon fire. Then it was gone, as if it had never existed. The phantom was toying with them. It could appear inside their strongest defenses, prove that nowhere was safe, then vanish before they could respond. The message was clear. "We can reach you anywhere, anytime we choose." That night, Zixthala called her senior officers to a private meeting. They gathered in the secure conference room, their crystal bodies flickering with nervous patterns. "We need to admit the truth," she said quietly. "We're fighting something beyond our understanding. Something that exists outside the normal rules of warfare." "What do you recommend, Admiral?" asked Velkan. Zixthala looked around the table at her frightened officers. These were warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds. Now they were afraid of empty space and sensor shadows. "We request reinforcements from High Command," she decided. "Tell them we need the full Third Battle Fleet and their best technology specialists. We're dealing with some kind of new physics." "Will they believe us?" asked QXMAR. "They'll have to. Because if they don't, we're going to lose this entire fleet to an enemy that shouldn't exist." As her officers filed out to send the emergency request, Zixthala remained alone in the conference room. Through the small window, she could see Earth in the distance. The humans had seemed so primitive, so easy to defeat, but maybe that had been their advantage. Maybe being primitive meant they could think of solutions that advanced civilizations would never consider. Maybe desperation made them willing to try impossible things. The Admiral returned to her bridge and stood before the main screen. Somewhere out there, the Phantom was waiting. Watching. Planning its next impossible attack. For the first time in her long military career, Zixthala felt like prey instead of predator. The hunters had become the hunted. And they didn't even know what was hunting them. The emergency meeting took place in the heart of the Kethvar Empire, on the crystal world of Vexthari. Fleet admirals from across the galaxy gathered in the great command chamber, their tall forms casting rainbow shadows on the walls. Supreme Admiral Kethvox stood before the massive holographic display showing the Empire's territories. Red warning lights blinked on dozens of systems, each one reporting the same impossible enemy. "The Phantom ships have appeared in 47 systems," Kethvox announced, his voice echoing through the crystal chamber. "Our fleets are requesting emergency reinforcements. Some are asking permission to withdraw entirely." A murmur of shock ran through the assembled admirals. The Kethvar Empire had never retreated from any enemy. Admiral Thexmar of the Fifth Fleet stepped forward. "Supreme Admiral, my forces have encountered these phantoms near the Rigel colonies. They appear from nowhere, strike our ships with impossible precision, then vanish completely. Our sensors show nothing until they attack." "The same reports from the Seventh Fleet," added Admiral Nixtal. "Ships disabled or destroyed by an enemy that seems to exist between dimensions. My officers are terrified. Some refuse to leave the main fleet formation." Kethvox studied the tactical displays. Each red marker represented hundreds of ships and thousands of crew members. The Empire's mighty fleets were paralyzed by fear of an enemy they couldn't see or understand. "What do our scientists say about these phantom ships?" he asked. Chief Science Administrator Zelkith approached the podium. Her ancient crystal body was clouded with age and wisdom. "We have analyzed all available data. The attacks show patterns consistent with quantum manipulation technology. The enemy appears to be using dimensional phasing to exist outside normal space." "Is such technology possible?" asked Kethvox. "Our research indicates it should not be. The energy requirements would be enormous. The risk of molecular collapse would be fatal. No rational species would attempt such dangerous experiments. But Admiral Zix Thala, who had traveled from Earth's system for this meeting, stepped forward. Perhaps that's the problem. We're dealing with an irrational species, humans who were desperate enough to try the impossible. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew about the humans. They were supposed to be primitive, barely capable of space travel. How could such a backward species develop technology that the Empire couldn't match? What do you recommend? Kethvox asked Zix Thala. My request for the third battle fleet was denied, she replied bitterly. High Command said I was chasing sensor ghosts. But in the past month, I've lost 30 ships to these ghosts. My remaining crews are terrified. They see phantom contacts everywhere. The psychological impact is spreading, reported Admiral Nix Tal. Other fleets are requesting transfers away from systems where phantoms have appeared. Some crews refuse to go on patrol without massive escort formations. Kethvox realized the true scope of the problem. The Empire's power depended on fear and respect. Their enemies submitted because Kethvar fleets seemed invincible. But now their own forces were paralyzed by terror. Meanwhile, in the Earth system, Dr. Sarah Chen was preparing for the most dangerous mission yet. The Times Revenant Times floated in quantum space near Jupiter's Great Red Spot, completely invisible to Empire sensors. Message received from the Vegan Resistance Cell, reported Lieutenant Miller. They've successfully built 3 Phantom ships using our designs. First test attacks were successful. Sarah smiled grimly. Her plan was working. While the Empire focused on the mysterious attacks, human survivors across the galaxy were building their own phase ships. Each new Phantom vessel made the Empire more paranoid and desperate. What about the Centauri group? She asked. 5 ships operational. They've cleared 2 systems of Empire patrol fleets. The Kethvar are too scared to send replacements. Captain Torres looked up from her weapons station. Doc, we're getting reports that some Empire fleets are pulling back to their main bases. They're abandoning territory they conquered years ago. Sarah felt a surge of hope. The Empire's grip was weakening. 3 months ago, they had seemed invincible. Now they were running scared from shadows and ghost stories. But she knew this was just the beginning. The Empire still controlled most of the galaxy. They still had thousands of ships and millions of troops. The Phantom attacks had hurt their confidence, but they would eventually adapt. Any word from Earth? She asked. The resistance cells are building faster than expected, Miller reported. They have materials from the captured Empire factories. Estimate 15 new Phantom ships will be ready within the week. Sarah nodded. Each new ship multiplied their effectiveness. The Empire couldn't fight an enemy they couldn't see. Every attack created more fear and confusion. Every impossible victory made them seem more like supernatural beings than human rebels. Captain Chen called Engineer Webb from his station. I'm detecting massive Empire ship movements. Looks like they're pulling forces from across the sector. Sarah moved to the tactical display. Red dots showed Empire fleets converging on their position. Ships from dozens of systems were heading toward Earth. They're massing for a major operation, Torres observed. Looks like Admiral Zix Thala is finally getting her reinforcements. How many ships? Sarah asked. Webb ran the calculations. Over 300 vessels, including several of their largest dreadnoughts. It's the biggest fleet concentration we've seen. Sarah felt her stomach drop. The Empire was preparing to end the Phantom threat with overwhelming force. They planned to blast every piece of matter in the system until nothing could hide. Send an emergency message to all Phantom ships, she ordered. Tell them to stay away from this system. The Empire is setting a trap. But even as her crew worked to warn the other rebels, Sarah was already planning their response. The Empire thought massive firepower would solve their Phantom problem. They were about to learn why human desperation and ingenuity were more dangerous than any weapon. What's the plan, Doc? Asked Torres. Sarah studied the approaching Empire fleet on her screen. 300 ships filled with terrified crews, commanded by admirals who had never faced a real defeat. They were coming to destroy the Phantoms, once and for all. We're going to give them exactly what they're afraid of, Sarah said quietly. A battle against an enemy that shouldn't exist. She turned to her crew. These brave humans who had followed her into the space between realities. They had started as scientists and soldiers. Now they were something new. Ghosts with a mission. Phantoms with purpose. Signal all Earth Phantom ships, she commanded. Tell them it's time for the Empire to learn what happens when you try to destroy something that lives between the laws of physics. The final battle was coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Zix Thala stood on the bridge of her flagship, surrounded by the largest fleet in Kethvar history. 347 crystal ships stretched across space in perfect formation. Massive dreadnoughts flanked by nimble destroyers, all focused on one goal: destroying the Phantom Menace. All ships report ready for final sweep, Commander Velkan announced. His voice carried new confidence. With so many vessels concentrated together, surely no Phantom could hide from their combined sensors. Begin the operation, Zix Thala commanded. I want every piece of matter in this system scanned and catalogued. If the Phantoms exist anywhere in normal space, we will find them. The Empire fleet spread out in a careful pattern, their sensors working together to create an invisible net across the entire system. Nothing could escape detection now. No ghost ship could hide from 300 sets of advanced scanners. But deep in quantum space, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the Empire formation with grim satisfaction. 23 Phantom ships hung invisible between dimensions, scattered throughout the fleet's perimeter. Each vessel carried the same crew she had started with. Desperate humans who refused to accept defeat. All Phantom ships report ready, Lieutenant Miller announced quietly. Quantum resonance charges are armed and distributed. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the Empire fleet's formation. The crystal ships had arranged themselves in tight defensive clusters, thinking their combined firepower would protect them. They had no idea they were about to face humanity's most terrible weapon. The quantum resonance charges had taken months to develop. Sarah's team had worked day and night to create devices that could manipulate the fabric of space itself. When detonated, they would create tears in reality that made dimensional phasing impossible in the affected area. Any matter caught between dimensions during the effect would be trapped there permanently. The Empire ships would become ghosts themselves, existing but not existing. Visible but untouchable. Begin phase sequence, Sarah commanded across the quantum communications channel. All ships prepare for simultaneous emergence. All 23 Phantom vessels shimmered as they prepared to drop back into normal space. The timing had to be perfect. They would have only 60 seconds to deploy the charges before the Empire sensors located and targeted them. Emergence in 10 seconds, Sarah announced. Remember, we only get one chance at this. The countdown reached 0. 23 Phantom ships materialized simultaneously inside the Empire fleet formation. They appeared like ghosts becoming solid, right in the heart of the enemy defenses. Alarm klaxons screamed across the Imperial fleet as sensors detected the impossible. Phantom contacts inside the perimeter, shouted Lieutenant Quixmar on the Empire flagship. Multiple vessels appearing throughout our formation. Admiral Zix Thala stared in horror at her tactical display. Red enemy markers were scattered between her own ships, closer than any vessel should be able to approach undetected. All ships, open fire, she commanded desperately. But the Phantom ships were already moving. They streaked between the crystal vessels like metal lightning, each one heading for a predetermined position. Energy beams lanced out from the Empire ships, but the Phantoms were too fast and too close. Sarah piloted the revenant times through the chaos, dodging weapons fire as she raced toward her target coordinates. Around her, other Phantom ships wove between the massive Empire vessels like deadly dancers. 30 seconds to optimal position, reported Torres from the weapons station. The Empire fleet was in chaos. Ships were firing in all directions, trying to hit enemies that moved like they belonged in a different reality. Crystal hulls flashed with reflected weapon energy as the formation dissolved into panic. Deploy charges, Sarah commanded. 23 quantum resonance devices launched from the Phantom ships, spreading throughout the Empire formation. The small spheres were invisible to normal sensors, designed to look like empty space until activated. Charges deployed, Miller reported. All Phantom ships ready for detonation sequence. Sarah looked one last time at the Empire fleet surrounding them. These crystal ships had conquered 1,000 worlds. Their crews had never known defeat. In moments, they would learn what it meant to exist between realities. Activate resonance field, she commanded. The charges detonated simultaneously, but not with fire or explosion. Instead, they created something far worse. Tears in the fabric of space itself. Invisible waves spread out from each device, overlapping and reinforcing each other, until the entire area became a dimensional maze. The effect was immediate and terrible. The Empire ships began to flicker like broken holograms. Their crystal hulls became transparent, then solid, then transparent again. The vessels were being forced into quantum superposition, existing in multiple states at once. Admiral Zixthala watched in horror as her flagship began to phase involuntarily. The bridge around her became ghostly, then solid, then ghostly again. Her crew members flickered like candle flames, sometimes visible, sometimes just shadows. "What's happening to us?" Commander Velkan cried out, his crystal body shifting between transparency and solidity. The answer came from their own sensors. The quantum resonance field was forcing everything in the area to exist between dimensions. The ships couldn't maintain structural cohesion when their atoms kept shifting between states of reality. But the worst part was the realization. The Empire crews understood what had happened to them. They were becoming the phantoms they had feared, trapped between real and unreal, visible but untouchable, existing but not existing. Some of the smaller Empire ships simply vanished, their matter scattered across multiple dimensions. Others became ghostly echoes of themselves, their crews trapped in a nightmare of partial existence. The Phantom ships, protected by their own quantum field generators, watched the chaos unfold. Then, as quickly as they had appeared, they phased back into quantum space and vanished. Sarah Chen found herself breathing heavily as the Time's revenant times returned to safety between dimensions. Through the quantum viewer, she could see the aftermath of their attack. The mighty Empire fleet was destroyed. Not by weapons or explosions, but by the laws of physics themselves. "Transmission coming in," reported Miller. "It's from Admiral Zixthala's flagship." The communication was broken and strange, the voice flickering in and out of existence like the ships themselves. "Human. Phantoms," the Admiral's distorted voice whispered across space. "What have you done to us?" Sarah activated the response channel. "We gave you what you gave us," she said simply. The experience of being powerless. The transmission cut off. Around the quantum-disrupted area, the few Empire ships that had escaped the effect were fleeing at maximum speed. They broadcast panicked warnings about reality-bending weapons and enemies that could turn matter itself into a weapon. "What now?" asked Captain Torres. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the retreating Empire forces. Word of this battle would spread across the galaxy. The story would grow in the telling, becoming legend and nightmare combined. "Now we wait," she said. "The Empire will think twice before attacking human worlds. They'll tell stories about the phantoms who can trap entire fleets between dimensions." "Will it be enough?" asked Engineer Webb. Sarah considered the question. The Empire still controlled most of the galaxy, but they had lost something precious today. Their confidence. Their belief in their own invincibility. "It's a beginning," she replied. "They came here to conquer primitives. Instead, they found an enemy that exists outside their understanding of reality. They'll never feel safe again." On the bridge of the Time's revenant asterisk, the crew of Earth's first Phantom ship looked out at the cosmos that would never be the same. Humanity had stepped beyond the normal laws of physics and become something new, something that lived in the spaces between atoms, in the gaps between what was real and what was possible. The Kethvar Empire would spread word of this battle across the galaxy. They would tell other species about the phantoms from Earth, the ghosts who could turn reality itself into a weapon. Some would think it was just another conquest story. Others would remember the name of humanity with new respect and fear. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had once been a peaceful scientist, looked out at the stars and smiled grimly. The galaxy had learned an important lesson today. Never underestimate the ingenuity of a desperate species. Humanity had become legend. They were the phantoms now. The ghosts who haunted the dreams of galactic empires. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, more phantom ships were being built, carrying the message that would echo across the cosmos. Earth remembers, Earth endures, Earth fights back. The age of human ghosts had begun.